since I'm not an English speaker, please excuse me something strange, and when I'm not being able to be very nuanced. So I will do this. Let's try to make this happen. Yes.
And Susanna, if I could ask you to speak up just a little bit, it's a little quiet on my side here, and I'll do a more formal introduction here while things get finished uploading, if you don't mind. Susanna Laurin is the CEO at Swedish accessibility consultant Funka and has been working for many years with issues around diversity, inclusion, and disabilities. She's board member of the International Association of Accessibility Professionals that Funka has co-funded and a popular lecturer traveling around the world. Susanna is active in standardization groups on national and international levels, and she is often debating human rights and accessibility as well as writing articles on the subjects. At Funka since 2003, she still likes to be around and involved in customer assignments, especially when it comes to methodology and user involvement. Susanna has a background from the IRIS group owned by the Organization of Visually Impaired in Sweden and the Independent Living Institute, and she's here with us today to discuss why WCAG is not enough. So please take it away when you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. So is the sound all right?
No? Sounds great now, yes, thank you.
Thank you for having a moderator, because making a webinar without a moderator is usually very difficult. So thank you for inviting me. I'm very delighted to be here. And it's 7 o'clock in the morning in Madrid, and it's actually a public holiday. So if you hear people screaming and being drunk or something, it's not my staff, it's the people you hear from on the street. So for you, those of you who might not know the company Funka, where I'm working, I would like just to say a couple of words so that you understand where my or our opinions come from. We are now a consultancy, but we were founded by the Swedish disability organizations. All of them went together to start a project. So we started out as a non-profit organization, and 11 years ago we turned into a company. Of course, we work with accessibility and user experience, and not only for some target groups, but for all target groups, and that's very essential for us, because all of the organizations and all disabilities were in our history, so to speak. We also do most of our work with ICT and digital accessibility, but we also work with accessibility in real life. And we do that through consulting and, of course, assignments for governments, mainly in Scandinavia, but also some work for the new Commission, European Commission, and standardization, of course, is an important part of our work. And we also do quite a lot of research and cooperational projects with different organizations and user organizations. And we do just what I think most accessibility experts do. We develop and design websites. We do audits and user testing, of course, and we provide advice for our customers and do training. So that's about it. And the introduction of me is already done, so I'll skip that. So what is the problem, really? I want to start with saying that I'm not trying to start a war against WCAG or something like that. Our work is based on WCAG, and we firmly believe that that the standards are very important, of course. But we have always used WCAG as a tool and not as the goal in itself. And even though W3C is doing an excellent job, and we are happy that there are standards, it's important to understand the limitations of WCAG, and that the standard is a minimum requirement. We like to call it a baseline, but Shadi of W3C doesn't like that, but it's a minimum requirement and not the answer to everything. And this might seem very obvious for experts in accessibility, people working with accessibility, but we know from experience that legislators and website owners and even the industry sometimes think otherwise. So I want to start somewhere else, because the most important thing for us is end users. And this is why we have done a research project with 5 user organizations, including people with reading and writing disabilities and cognitive disabilities and other abilities as well. to see how users prefer to perceive content. And most of our customers in public sector, at least in Scandinavia, the websites are often consist of text, and nothing but text. And we know that many users struggle with understanding text. So we really wanted to try to see what we could do instead, because taking the web to its full potential, as we all like to do, that surely must mean something more than just text. So we started with creating a very good text based on customer text, but we made it very much better. And we had two groups of users with different abilities, and a control group with users who see themselves as good readers with no problem at all understanding content on the web. And we made
Susanna, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you could adjust your microphone or speak up just a bit more, we're getting a couple of requests for that there in the chat. So, sorry again, and thank you.
To the screen. So what we did was making tests with several hundred people, combination of face-to-face tests and also over the internet. And we have a scientific control or help and methodology from the University of Lund in southern Sweden. And the result of these tests were analyzed as, we put them together to reflect the abilities of the general public. So according to how many of the different target groups really exist in the grown-up population in Sweden, we were analyzing the result. And this is what we found. Even when we made the texts as good as we possibly could with language experts, making them very readable and easy to read in all respects, we could only get 50 to 60% of the end user test persons to understand the content and answer control questions afterwards. So when we added pictures, illustrations, and film, and we choose how to do this according to if it was information or instruction or what kind of content it was. But when we added pictures, illustrations, or film, another 20 to 30% of the test persons could understand the content and answer the control questions. And when we added sound, that is not live sound, but a synthetic speech, another 8 to 10% could understand the content and answer the control questions. So from our point of view, this means that text could not be the answer to everything. And again, standards are key. This is quite an interesting picture. Most of you might have seen it before, but it's really what can happen if you just read the rules and don't really do something that is useful for real people. If we look at WCAG, it has a lot of technical solutions to human problem, because during history, recent history, WCAG has developed by people who mostly are very capable of making code and technical solutions. So the focus has been mostly on assistive technology for visually impaired and other assistive technology, and how these users are going to be able to use the web, which of course is extremely important. But the result is that by a reflex or out of sheer habit, you're looking for technical solutions, and also text is being perceived as the basement or the basic part of content. So technical solutions mainly for people with assistive technology and much focus on visual impairment. That is a problem in itself. But also, as you all know, WCAG 2 was published in 2008, and since then we have got the smartphones and the touch screens, so it's not really up to date in how internet usage looks today. Of course, this is a problem with all standardization. It takes time, but this is really a problem in the fast developing world of ICT. And also today we use the web in a completely different way, as you all know. We interact with the web. We do not just read or perceive content, but we are also content providers ourselves. So WCAG doesn't really cover all these things. And I will provide you with a couple of early morning examples, and starting out with text and non-text. The first principle in WCAG is perceivable. This is fine. Information and user interface components must be presentable to users in ways they can perceive. This is perfect, of course. It sounds very good. But in reality, text and text means that the first guideline talks about text alternatives. Provide text alternatives for any non-text content. This is, of course, very important for screen reader users and a very good rule to follow. But what about the other users? If content is defined as text or non-text, then the rule says that non-text is to be complemented with text, but there is no requirement of the opposite. So, for example, film is not text. So a film must have another the content of the film must have a text version. That is fine. But if you do not read text and do need the film, as we saw many of the users would prefer or maybe need, then there is no requirement for the opposite. So if you have a film, you need to make it into text, but if you have text, you do not need to make it into film or pictures or illustrations or animations or sound or anything. The text is fine. The text is the rule in WCAG. If we look at an example of text, a manual or an instruction film, to the left here is a traditional manual, step by step in text, how to do something. And I think the example is from how to create a web part in SharePoint. I don't know how to do that, so I would really need an instruction. And to the right, there's an instruction via film. And I'm quite sure that for many users, the film would be the better, easier, and maybe more efficient way of getting the instruction. And of course, for me, it would be much easier to understand how to do things if I get a live instruction where I really see how I do things. But the film does not comply with WCAG. I'm not sure if the step-by-step texting do either. I didn't do an audit of it, but in general, the stepwise instruction in text could comply with WCAG very easily if you just made the website in the right way. So to comply with WCAG, the film would have to have subtitles of the dialogue and then a text transcript, so that you also get texted out what is seen on the screen. And this is, of course, very important, because if you provide a film without a text, people that are not sighted are not no idea what is going on the screen. So it's an important rule. But for the users that do see and do prefer a film or a picture or an animation, this could pose a real problem that they don't get that alternative. They only get text. Another example, since I'm being a Swede, the IKEA success story is something we often talk about. I firmly believe that they could not have reached their position all over the world if they had sent out the instruction on how to put the furniture together in text. That would be very difficult for many people. It would be easy for some, but extremely difficult. And of course, the instruction, neither the film IKEA has on the web or the paper instructions with pictures that they send out together with their packages, none of them comply with WCAG. And I'm not really sure that more people could be able to do a good job with the IKEA furniture if everything was in text. So it's just a way to think different and maybe think that a picture or the combination of pictures and text and maybe film is, of course, the best way to do everything. We usually call it multimodality, and that's completely missing the whole idea or the concept or the discussion on that making things, both pictures and photos and text together. It's not missing in WCAG. There are some text about it, but really the text is the baseline and the film and the pictures are the complement to the text. And we do believe that you have to see it as equal parts of communication. So moving on to the level of difficulty. In Principle 3, WCAG says that content has to be understandable. Information and the operation of the user interface must be understandable. Fine. What does that mean? The reading level on AAA 3.1.5, it says when the text requires reading ability more advanced than the lower secondary education level after removal of proper names and titles, supplemental content or a version that does not require reading ability more advanced than the lower secondary educational level, blah, 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 is available. Okay, fine. It's difficult for a non-English speaker to read, but I more or less understand. But really, as a consultant, I feel this would be a recommendation to keep a bad text, to keep a complicated text that is above secondary level. First of all, this is only required on level AAA, and today more or less no one is interested in what is in AAA. So it's a pity that it's not AA, I think. But it only says that if you have text, you should have a complement to it. And it doesn't say anything about what I perceive to be the most intelligent recommendation that would be write it in an easier way or explain the difficult words in the text. No, it says you have to have a mechanism to make a complement or another version. Also, WCAG does not say that a film or a picture or an illustration could be very difficult to understand, and that would have to be explained in some way, but it doesn't say. Text is the only thing WCAG really talks about. So what is reading ability? According to OECD, they're making a test of literacy every second year, I believe. And of course, the result varies among countries. And I don't know all the countries. I haven't studied all the countries, and I don't know the literacy levels of other countries than the ones that we work in. But in Sweden, for example, approximately 20% of the grown-ups have problems reading and understanding a text in a normal newspaper. And the share of people that are having these literacy problems are rising. And literacy, I think, is a little bit more interesting than reading ability because it puts reading ability into a practical or more functional context. So it's interesting to measure literacy and not only reading ability. So what does WCAG say? It says in level A and AA that that you have to make mechanisms of the language of a page should be programmatically determined, this beautiful word, and the language of parts. That's more or less the same thing. What does this mean? That means that assistive technology should be able to detect the language. So it's only for assistive technology and not really something about the content and how people understand the content. It's only that assistive technology can possibly, so to speak, translate into the right language, which is fine, but definitely not enough. On level AAA, there are more points about reading ability, and this is unusual words, abbreviations, and pronunciations. And all of these guidelines starts with a mechanism is available for, a mechanism, blah, blah, blah. So technical solution is required here. And this could be translated or interpreted as keeping the incomprehensible in the text instead of doing things easier for the reader. So this is a mechanism from WCAG. The example is from WCAG. So there's a dotted line under the strange word CAPTCHA, which normal people don't understand outside of the accessibility world. So you have a difficult word in the content, and then you have a dotted line, and you can click there, and you will get a description of what that means. But that's fine, of course, but WCAG doesn't state if the description of the word, how that should be and how difficult the description can be. Because if you make a description of CAPTCHA that is completely very difficult to understand, it doesn't really help me as a user. So, and also really the recommendation must be, I think, not to provide a mechanism, but to think before you write things and really try to write things in a way that your target group or audience can possibly understand what you say in the first place. So then we go to conceptual accessibility, if that's possible to say in English. This has to do with the guideline 3.2, predictable. You're supposed to make web pages appear and operate in predictable ways, which is, of course, very, very important. And all of this, I think I don't know if I need to read it, but yes, I need to read it. 3.2.1 is on focus. When any component receives focus, it does not initiate a change of context. And on input, changing the setting of any user interface component does not automatically cause a change of context unless the user has been advised of the behavior before using the component. Fine. Consistent navigation, navigational mechanisms that are repeated on multiple web pages within a set of web pages occur in the same relative order each time they are repeated unless a change is initiated by the user. And then consistent identification, that components that have the same functionality within a set of web page are identified consistently. And then the change on request means that changes of context are...
Thanks so much, Susanna. Really interesting stuff. We've got a few minutes here left. Are there questions from the group
but if you talk to
that we can answer?
Clients or industry that really does not understand accessibility in the first place and don't understand why they're supposed to do this, this could be really interpreted as a very complex solution is okay as long as you use it all the time. But that could never be good from an end user perspective. A very complex solution is only okay if the target group can understand the complex solution. So it's not a very good recommendation, I think.
No, the chat would be posted, I believe.
Need to use more than one interface or more.
There were some questions in there about the archives and where the recordings will be posted, and
this is the case in many services.
We will be posting those as soon as they're available. Keep an eye on Twitter as well as the inclusivedesign24.org website for more information about those.
You are very often, at least in...
Are there any additional questions for Susanna at this point?
To look at many different interfaces subsequently or at the same time, and you are forced to do this and then that.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining, everyone. Thank you for your time, Susanna. We appreciate it very, very sincerely. Coming up shortly, in about 20 minutes, we'll get started on our next presentation. Thank you very much.
You do use more than one system or interface. Even if the end user does not choose this, the service provider makes it very difficult by making me move from one interface to the other. And also, it could be interpreted as any illogical solutions are okay as long as they are used consistently. And this is also, of course, this is a bit a bad way to read the regulations and standards. But I think you need to understand that what I'm trying to do here is not to say that it's possible to interpret it in a stupid way. Of course, it is with all guidelines, but really the things that are not covered in WCAG are very basic. So this is what I'm trying to get through to you, that we can't say that illogical solutions are okay as long as they are used consistently, because that's a very strange recommendation. Of course, we need to work to logical solutions and solutions that help the end user to understand what is happening. So, and the last example would be the cognitive overload. And the problem here is that it's very little trace in WCAG of the impression that a page or a website is given to the end user. The impression is very, the appearance and the impression is not only design. Design is important, but it's also if it looks trustworthy, for example. And if there is very much content on one page, it could be different kinds of content or just text or just pictures, but still very much content on one page makes a cognitive overload for many users. And that is not really dealt with in WCAG either. And the overall logic of a system, a navigation, the possibility to get to correct mistakes or not to make mistakes, and how to find your way back in the navigation and things like that. Somehow the pedagogical parts of accessibility, or close to usability maybe, but really the overall logic of a system or a web page is extremely important for cognitive disabled and I think all of us when we perceive a website, that we understand the overall logic of the system. Also, intuition and intuitive usage is not mentioned in WCAG as far as I know. And we need also to make systems and pages that that provide confidence and trust. We really see many users with and without disabilities that don't trust content if there are spelling mistakes or it's not consistent or not logical. You're maybe not sure who is really the person or the organization behind this website. So trust is extremely important for users, and trust is a part of accessibility that is also not dealt with in WCAG. So that is one of the things that we think are missing as well. So taking this into account, I say it's no wonder that sites do not comply, because even if WCAG is just for us a small part of accessibility, if you try to make suppliers of web pages to dig deep into these requirements and say that they are very important, which they are, but then they do not seem to solve the problems that users have, then I think we cannot expect that the industry will really comply with the guidelines or follow the rules that we set up. I think a greater problem for the rest and not only for accessibility people. Because the way, if we have the requirements must be much broader and to have a more human approach to what they try to achieve, and not only be very technical and talk about assistive technology the whole time. So more is needed than just standards, and of course this is where the consultants come in, but to find a way of using WCAG in a way that is not just the answer to everything, but really just one part of accessibility. We believe that is very important, and this example is, I think, a very good way. I know this is not really up to standards; it's not following all the rules, but it's a nice example of good, innovative creation, very creative. It's from Vancouver, Robson Square. And I think I don't see any questions in the chat room. Do you have others? Or?